Okay, we're live. I'm back here, and I am not touching the keyboard at all. Right? See if you guys come back. And what can I say? Here we are, and okay, Stacy. Yeah, I'm back. No, didn't eat all the fries. Still got half a box. But I'm right in the corner, and everyone's placing stuff everywhere. I keep knocking things over. I don't want to cramp these guys' style. These guys are pretty amazing. Here. Get another 8. Hey, what are my 2 cards?
6 and a 9.
Usually I'm happy with a 69, but that's not a good one.
That's yours, sir. Maybe later.
Oh, thank you.
So these guys are like bowling strikes. Every time I look up, somebody makes a strike. Pretty amazing. So, so today's story, again, hey, welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I'm here at the bowling alley with my friend who is working on becoming a pro. And he's got to come and do this twice a week. He practices, but he has to have enough of these kind of neighborhood things before. It's like being in, Double A baseball. So, yep. I was always comic relief at bowling. I was always the guy where the ball would stick in my thumb and I would throw it up in the air and I would fall on my back and, you know. So I was never a big bowling guy. Now, billiards, I can play a mean rack of billiards. What are their games? Out of games, that's it. Pool and billiards is it for me. Whoa, bowling, yep. I like that. That's exactly what it sounds like. As to the symbols, any large, triumphant arch or any big thing. It's interesting. There is a obelisk in France, in Paris, that where Diane smashed into the tunnel. The thing that she smashed into and killed her was the obelisk foundation, and that was put up by the Illuminati. So pretty much, she was toast. Whenever you step up, step out. I've been, the happy-go-lucky griot shaman, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, and I've worked for those guys, but I've never signed on, right? I've never did any of the ceremonies. And poor Diana was raped in those ceremonies. Right? So I don't have the inside dope. All I have is a scholarly point of view. And that's enough to be ignored, right? And that's why my channel here, a number of people, why is there thousands of people watching? This is amazing stuff. It is amazing stuff. And the majority of the amazing stuff is you, the cadre who come and chat. That's really the energetics. And I am here just to be the example, to go out and do things that normally people wouldn't do. But I go out and do it to try and get you guys to break your norm. So in your towns, your cities, your village, that you do art, that you find a little coffee shop that you can all hang in and make it your own. I used to live on McDougal Street down in Greenwich Village, right? And there were all these coffee houses. Some coffee houses, everyone drank coffee. But there were 5 or 6 coffee houses. There was one coffee house where all the beats hung out. There was where all the folk singers hung out. So that's where you found Dylan and all those guys before they were anything, writing songs, and then they would go hang out up on Tin Pan Alley, where all of the publishing houses, the songs, and all the songwriters would be up there, right? And all the rock and roll songwriters would hang out up in Tin Pan Alley, and they would go hang out at that bar. After they would hang out during the day, like from about 10 until about 5, drinking coffee and get totally buzzed, and then they go up to Tin Pan Alley and drink beer or something harder, and so it's really interesting. You go listen to Dylan's songs, his first, all of the music he's taking from the Tin Pan Alley guys, because they're like writing the stuff there at the bar. They had like 5 or 6 pianos in Tin Pan Alley, and Dylan got all his music, all his songs. If you go and find yourself a musical historian who really knows the story, especially about blues and rock and what came after that, you will see that everyone. And then there was this thing called sampling, that became hip hop, and who's the guy who had the big nose and he would talk really funny, and he was really the guy who invented rap and hip hop and all of, and virtually everyone. He took everything from jazz musicians, and then everybody, you name it, Prince to Jay-Z, took their songs from him, all their riffs, right? And I forgot who is the guy, Snoop. The first 2 or 3 albums, all Snoop used to do was he would sample all his musical thing were samples, like clips, bing, 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 like hundreds, right? Once the digital thing came out where they could just take little slices and tune them, that super tuner thing, and then he would write a rap song to it. And that's why it was popular, and that's why the corporations jumped on it, because it was like straight up what the corporations do, right? So, but when you do it first, it's called art. When I worked for Andy Warhol and Dali, they were ripping off everybody. I mean, they were hiring guys like me to paint and do photo collages and I was into screen printing, and they would, we would do all kinds of crazy, like Andy Warhol had this thing, The Factory. He lived, like all of us lived in Soho, and the city gave us a hard time for living in commercial buildings. Andy was smart enough, he watched a few of us get hassled by the New York City building department, the fire department. Andy just called his office The Factory. And so they would come and go, oh, this is the factory, not a problem. It's a factory building. Okay. I mean, that's how smart Andy was. And and then he became rich and famous, and he stepped into the culture. He made the culture. John, I could go out and talk to people. Well, Andy Warhol couldn't either. John has his phone as his little, he doesn't even look at the world. He sees it through his screen. Well, Andy did the same thing with his little Minox. He had a Minox, right? And I had a dial. It was a Rolex, and it's a motor drive, but you wound it up, and it was a half frame camera. So on a Rolex 36, you got 72 pictures, and I would put the 2 pictures. I would choreograph the 2 images on that one 35 millimeter square to go together, right? And so I was like, and that's when Andy started seeing me do that. He said, "Hey, kid, first I was his electrician. He kept blowing his factory up, and this, one of his minions came. There was a downtown electric supply right at Union Square, right on like 17th Street. He was like on 15th Street, and this guy goes, "Who can fix? Andy's lights don't work." And the guy who ran the place said, "Hey, kid, come over here." This guy, and points at me. He'll fix it for you. I had my little bag of tools, walked in there, and they had everything plugged into one thing. They had burned out a circuit breaker board, and he was like, and everything was plug fused. So Andy knew to put a penny in to just. So he burnt everything up, and I rewired it all in a day. I mean, I went over. I said, "Give me $1,000," and Andy just gave me $1,000. I went over and bought. I took it right off the Edison base of the meter, put 3 200 amp panels, and then ran 5 or 6 100 amp panels over to where he did his silk screening, one over where he did his movies, one over where he did this, and then I put loads of plugs and theater plugs to plug his lights into. I did in a day, and he was like, "Wow!" And I said, "Well, that's cool." And then I started talking about photography. "Oh, you're a photographer?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'd love to see some of your work." And I always carry pictures. I said, "Here, take a." So these are really good. So I need a photographer. He said, because I'm always taking my own pictures and I'm never in them. And I said, "Okay." So I was his electrician and his photographer. Then he started doing movies, and I started doing storyboards for him. He didn't know what a storyboard. I said, "How can you tell a story in a film if you don't make a storyboard?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." And I was like, 17 when I did this, right? And I didn't go, "Oh, it's Andy Warhol." Oh, no, oh, and everybody was, the next youngest person was 22, and there were a lot of weird people there. I mean, I didn't think they were weird. They were just interesting to me. But, today, there were trans and gays and you name every LGBT pseudonym and color and shade and belief structure. He had skinheads there, guys with, Andy was, he was looking for anything that was interesting. And he couldn't stand being around people, but he realized that if he wanted to make it big, it's what he was going to have to do. So he did it. He made it as enjoyable as he could. And the thing he loved most about it was being the ringleader. It was like a circus. Go on YouTube and go look up Andy Warhol's film. I bet you will see me walking through the frame because I was there a lot. No matter how much stuff changes, stays the same. And what we're heading for is just what happened to the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. Meaning Rome was the power of the universe, right? And it pushed its might out into the hinterlands, into Africa, into England, up there into Sweden and down, everywhere. And so the center collapsed. And that's what's going to happen to us because there's, people with CRISPR.
Oh, I won.
CRISPR, now there's new, better CRISPR. So you can buy a CRISPR on eBay for whatever. And you could make your own nasty virus in your kitchen. And one little slip, and there goes the human race as a great goo. Gore Vidal wrote a great, I really love Gore Vidal because he was a writer and he didn't stick to the same thing over and over again. A lot of people, every novel he wrote was different, right? And he wrote a sci-fi thing about this guy, it's a story coming from a female pilot who is one of the last people left on Earth. And this guy figures out how to poison the whole human race by making a virus and then spreads it around. And he, picks the handful of people that he wanted to be start the human race over again as, but he wasn't smart enough to genetically see if they could have kids. So the book ends where everybody's dead except for this handful of people, and they're the only ones left, right? And they have as much, they can do anything, they have any building they want to live in, because people just died like that. and he genetically engineered them to like walk into these seas, so they weren't all the nasty bodies everywhere. But anyway, he wrote that in the 60s. But go read Gord Vidal. Gord Vidal is the man. And Whitley Strieber. Now Whitley, good buddy of mine, he writes stories. Like he wrote the first book that hit the big times about being abducted, because he really was abducted. From childhood. I mean, these little gray guys were around him his whole friggin' life. And if you went to visit him upstate, and it's nice, I don't know, if he was scared of those guys, why he lived in the deep green of upstate New York. I don't know why. But anyway, so the first few books are constantly about that. And then he realized he had to put a different spin on it. But he's still dealing with that thing. But then he wrote a really good book about 2012. You should go read that one. And he's written a few other really good books. And David Icke is another guy. I really love every book he does. He really is, he is the dude. But they're all, the same book, basically. Reptiles, blah, blah, blah. Now, his information's impeccable, Same with, now, if you go read Chris Hedges, who had been a Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post journalist, and he kept telling the truth. And because they are part of the fake news, they kept saying, hey, you can't tell the truth. So they fired him. After he had like 4 Pulitzer Prizes, they had to let him go. So he starts his own, YouTube TV network, and he writes his own books. He is impeccable. If you want to know what's going on geopolitically and where we're heading, go read Chris Hedges, right? And if you want to get a stream of news, Jimmy Dore and Joe, what's his name, who used to do the Fear Factor show. Now Jimmy is passionate and is off the hook, and it's like the Daily Show. When Jon Stewart did the Daily Show, I mean, the only person doing network news courageously and righteously was the Daily Show. If you wanted to know what was going on, you watch the Daily Show. So you want to know what's going on, Jimmy Dore show. But again, Jimmy Dore kind of, he really is all, I mean, he needs to widen his view a little bit. But, he's doing what he's doing. It's really great. I'm not going to, but you can't take everything Jimmy says as the only thing going on. Everything Jimmy's talking about is right on. He's hilarious. Because he's a whack job comedian. But he's telling the truth. Just like Wiley Post. He's the guy he was a cowboy. I was trying to pretend I was Wiley Post when I was Cowboy Bob. And, of course, what happens to Wiley? Everyone gets a radio, gets the most popular radio show. Everyone's listening to him. He's telling the truth about everybody. Republicans, Democrats, everybody. And so one day him and his buddy end up dead flying an airplane. Wiley Post, I think, was the pilot, and the cowboy guy was somebody else. So that's where we're at. I can't.
Hey, let me tell you a story. You got home. I may buy one of them necklaces with a big dick on it. You get hung, you gotta wear it. No,
Yes. Yep. I like it too. And that's David. David just wants to get the word out. I knew David back in the day in the early 90s when we had these conferences that like 12 people would show up. Out of the U.S. Psychotronic Society, the Theosophical Society, a few other New Age entities like the Green Door. The Green Door is a great place. It was down on Spring Street. It was a big building. This rich person bought it and said, "Okay, kids, do whatever you want there." And we did, theater, and we had these new age conferences, and I was, doing my alternative healing and my alternative energy. I was levitating, anti-gravity things. I had my little laboratory, and that's when we got contacted by DARPA. The guys like what's his name? Oh, the Montauk guy, Al Bielek, Duncan, big guy, and all these guys worked like Grumman and Sperry and worked on Department of Defense stuff. So we ended up all playing with toys for DARPA, and that was pretty cool. Until I realized that, we were going to be had. And basically, everyone who stuck at it basically got a little wire in their head. Me, because I always play the party boy. I'm always the guy who kind of keeps everything rolling along happily. And when, we come up against a brick wall, I'm the guy who digs deep into the esoteric box and pulls out, something to do. And I do it on every kind of level because my whole raison d'etre is to be the grease of the wheel, to make it happen, not to be it, not to, own it, not to be the star. Now, I've stepped in the spotlight a number of times because no one else would. And if that doorway wouldn't be kicked open, well, it wasn't going to happen. Well, I kicked the door in, but I didn't have to stay the person kicking the door in, So now I'm gently kicking the door in now because I'm telling you stories to try to motivate you guys to, in your own neighborhoods, to do the same, because this can't be done in any one single place. It has to become everyone has to be the pebble in the puddle, and that vibration, because that's the only way that we're gonna, because the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand wants to do another rebranding, just like they did bringing the Roman Empire into the Holy Roman Empire into the Dark Ages for 900 years. We don't need that. We don't need, they were on the edge of going, into light speed, The Egyptians had all this down, People in Africa had this down. But it was the Roman Empire that threw the human race under the bus. And John Birmingham, he is, if you want to see what the hidden hand's going to do, John Birmingham is, I keep calling him the canary in the coal mine, He is the example of the end of times, People talk about, 666. I bet it's, tattooed on his back of his head so he can't see it, But as he's losing his hair, he's, it's going to be able to be right out there in the open. And John doesn't even know it. Now, not to say that, John's the Antichrist. He's not, because he's too nice of a guy. He really is. But, as someone said earlier, he doesn't think about anything, right? And the closest he comes to thinking about anything is he thinks about himself. That's all he thinks about, right? And he doesn't even do it in, he does it in the same way that Donald Trump does. Donald Trump, it's all about Donald Trump. But he is unconscious to the point of being comatose, and because, of all the people that have been around him, you look at his father. His father was a, Nazi KKK guy, right? His uncle, his father's brother, was the scientist that broke into Tesla's apartment and murdered Tesla and stole all the things he was working on when he was in the New Yorker hotel, right? And you'll find there's a book called about Baron Trump's, time trend. Baron, his son is a time traveler. Just look at that kid. And now there's a kid who could be the Antichrist, right? So, and all of this is right in our face. Nothing is hidden, and that's the beauty of Donald Trump. And that's why I love Donald Trump, because he is outing everyone, right? But but he doesn't realize he's being set up, because the way they're going to rebrand this is that there's no way that Donald Trump cannot be indicted. Same with Mike Pence. All those people are going to be wearing orange. And he's going to be blamed for everything. Whereas all those guys, the Democrats, you can't find any more despicable people than them. So everything he's talking about the deep state, he's right, but he doesn't realize that he is being played, right? And he's going to be set up. So his 6 million people who are his unwaverable, Donald Trump will pass a law where all these people lose everything they ever had because of a law that he has pushed. They will all be put in camps, and they will still love Donald Trump. And then they will be inoculated with some total wacko rabies something, and then turn loose on the rest of the country. And that's where we're going back into, the dark ages. And all these people have no idea that they're being played. Now, I'm surrounded by these folks, and I talk to them, right? I'm wearing my USA hat. We talk, and as I talk, I don't, I connect to them because I understand what they're going through, right? And what they love, and how they're at it. And, that's why they call it mother's milk. Drinking beer with a straw. It's more convenient that way. Anyway. I'm always all right, no matter where I am. I've been in the middle. I was, in Brazil, in Africa, in Yugoslavia, when there was a lot of, as a newspaper photographer, in the middle of wars, I was in countries that had, martial law, where they just put the bag over your head, zipped it up, and you never saw them again. And I was being mean. I got driven home once in Caracas, by the secret police. And I went out with the guys, who were artists, but they were, the people the secret police were looking at. And I was pretty drunk. And, they took me. And, did they hang me up by my thumbs? No. They took me out for a drink. We played pool. I told them stories. We laughed. This one guy told me about his son. I gave him advice on his son, and then they drove me back to my hotel. Right? And this one guy who drove me home, I wasn't with the rest of the secret police, just this one guy who drove me home. And he basically said, we're the secret police. I said, really? Really? You guys are nice guys. And they said, well, we like you too. That's why you don't have a black, you're not in a field as fertilizer. And I said, then why do you do, and I'm still drunk out of my mind. I said, so why do you do this? You're a human being. We're connecting as a human being. How come you're doing this? He goes, because if I didn't, my wife and my daughter would get raped. And then their throats would be slit. This way, I have a nice house. I get a good, income every week. I have this car to drive. My little girl gets to go to school. My wife gets to see a doctor. And none of my family is going to end up at fertilizer. And that's what the hidden hand does. It forces people into the corner. And they do this to the point where they stop being human. And he says, the guys that I'm with, we're a bunch of the guys who are still human. And he said that there are people I started out with getting trained by your CIA, and they're not human anymore. We stay away from them. But there's still of us, and so we try and do some good. Like I'm driving you to your hotel, and we're not going to take those guys because they're actually just artists. They're not really trying to overthrow the government. And that's what I do. I mix it up with everybody. And I forget everyone's name. I don't know anybody's name, right? And they can torch me. I don't know. I've like erased that part of my. That's why I call everyone L and J and 4 and 9 and make up, a nickname. Unless I'm reading it off the live chat, So, we have like, as of Friday, we will have 14 months. Now, things are going like what they did with this Baghdadi guy. That's not a great thing because when we got rid of Saddam, of Al Qaeda, that's what gave birth to ISIS because it broke up. The one thing that kept Al Qaeda together is a political entity that stood for an ideological point of view was the boss. Once he got whacked, and then there were all these different factions. That's where ISIS came from. And then, the CIA that started, Al Qaeda through the funding from Saudi Arabia and Israel. Because all you have to do is look back to the day of Iran-Contra. Everything that's going on right now was put in place then. And everything that was done then was put in place. Go watch the movie, The French Connection. You see that all of the drugs, all of the guns, all of the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all came out of World War II. I mean, they had all of these weapons stockpiled to go after Japan. And when we dropped the bomb on them and they finally said, okay, uncle, what did we do? We moved all of the tanks and, ordnance into China, into Vietnam, into Korea. And we factionalized all of those countries and then kicked off the war. And it made a ton of money for Boeing and Bell Aerospace and all of those companies, the military. Why do you think Eisenhower gave the little story of the military-industrial complex? But he left out the military-industrial banking, education, and media, because they were already in it. They were already owned. All the newspaper guys were already owned. And our legislators, after the Civil War, the carpetbaskers, all of those guys, we had the best legislators money could buy. So, but we're coming up to this linchpin where we can do a jujitsu move to throw this out. And the only thing that can overdo fear, hate, and unlimited force, power, hate is art. Love's co-creation. That's why we have to, develop this alternative aesthetic, right? Well, these guys are drinking away. Everyone's already had about 6 beers. I'm amazed. These guys keep throwing strikes. I guess. I used to think when I played pool for money that I did. There was this edge, having a buzz and being drunk. Being drunk, I didn't do too good. But having that little bit of buzz and just having a good time, I was unbeatable at pool. These guys are amazing. mean, you look up at the board there, everybody's making strikes. So you guys always this good? They're ignoring me. So hey, are you guys always this good?
Always this good.
Are you guys are all, you're all throwing strikes.
Yeah, but we're losing though.
Oh, but you're having fun, right? Oh, well, isn't that the most important thing? Fun. I used to be known as the minister of fun. You know.
Yeah, we have fun.
Yes.
We lose, but we have fun.
But
We'll win one game.
yeah, but I was never bothered by losing as long as I learned something. And that's one of the rules I always had. Is if I learned something, it was okay if I lost. You know, when I was inventing things, you know, I mean that's why I had 3 years in Los Alamos, Sandias, and Kirkland Air Force Base. You know, they called me a bench electrician. They said, okay, we need a power supply that does this. And I would build it. I mean, they didn't give me a blueprint saying build it this way. We just say, this is what's going in, this is what we want to come out. And I would build it. And they would give me unlimited amount of stuff to play with. I would, every week make a little list of things I needed, and they would show up Monday, and I would fool around, blow things up, burn things out. Oh, look at that, that worked. So I was never, there was a colonel that I didn't quite work under, but I did work under him, and he was at all three places, and he kind of brought me with him. It was never in paperwork that way, but he would get a promotion and go someplace else, and I would end up a week or two where he was working on something. He would say, hey, what do you think about this? And all the guys in lab coats, because they were stuck in a scholastic way, I remember being in a workshop with a bunch of these guys in Los Alamos. And I had this girlfriend who had Connect. She was, in the Air Force, and she would fly in some amazing tie stick. And she would always give me a nice little bundle, right? I remember we were sitting in this, place that no one could see us. It was like, one of those places where it's secure, right? So there's nobody listening, nobody watching, allegedly. And I brought my little staffs with me, and they're talking about, when they give out the, proposition paper, we need this to do this, this, and this, how are we going to do it? And because I'm the guy who's going to stick the thing together, I'm there, and I'm not even listening to them. I've already read this thing. I already made my notes, and I start rolling joints, right? And, and this in the days, 70s, these guys smoke pipes and cigars and, So I light this up, and I start puffing, and they go, what is that? I said, here, try it. So I lit one up for every one of them. We all had our own. We didn't have to pass it around because that was too spooky for those guys. So everybody had their own cigarette. And, they get a buzz. And so they started laughing and cracking jokes and thinking outside the box, right? And so a couple of days later, I went to lunch with the colonel, and he said, I was watching you guys. I said, you're watching us? I thought that's supposed to be nobody's watching anything. He goes, I watch everything. And I said, so you saw me get those guys stoned? He said, yeah. He goes, that was a pretty good idea, because they made jumps outside of the box that they would have never made unless you. I said, so you're not mad? Oh, no. He goes, don't do it every time. But whenever they get stuck like that, you have my permission, no problem, right? And if your girlfriend, and he knew my girlfriend was bringing it in. And he goes, and if she runs out of anything, or if you need anything, just ask me. He goes, Al, and I already knew this. He goes, never ask anybody other than me for anything. Colonel, I understood this. I said, I understand who you are because I see 4-star generals like almost saluting you. So I understand what's going on. And he goes, yeah, I know. You come from this community. I said, yeah, well, genetically, not philosophically. And he goes, yeah, but that's why I like you. You're honest. You're hardworking. You come straight up with the ideas, and you're not trying to control anything. You're trying to lead this group into higher plane of understanding. He goes, no, you've got me meditating, and I said, yeah. So that's what I do. I don't isolate on any group. I don't factionalize. I don't believe in tribes. I believe in love's co-creation with all of our relations, all of them, because we can't isolate any group out. Because if we do, that's what starts war, right? And war is not fun. So Hadrian, Fish, Stacy, Jane, Jack, Jamie, good to see all the 6 of you. So how about some more thumbs up? How about going getting some more, people to join the cadre, and I want you guys to start doing this on your own. If you want to do a YouTube channel and play my shows on the, did you ever see that thing on cable, Science Fiction Theater 2000? Why don't you guys play my shows in the background and do your own show in the foreground and make fun of me like that stuff does, I mean, just think outside the box. We only got, as of Friday, we got 14 months. I'm not a doom and gloom kind of guy, but why do you think I'm living out in the middle of the woods? Why do you think I am going to spend the winter here? It's going to be bitch ass cold, no water, very little electricity. All of my comforts will not work. I am like, training, like what, So I'm in a place where I'm kind of 40 miles in any direction to the nearest big, town, not even a city, 60 miles to a city. And, there's only one county road by me. And there are tons of roads up into the mountains that, only a 4-wheel can go. And I know them all, So, the only way, and I know the hidden hand knows where I'm at. When one of you guys found me on Google Earth, so, I know that I'm authorized to do this because if they wanted to get rid of me, one drone strike would have, where did Al go? All that's left is like a burned out hole where his tent was, Training for life. Yep. So. But it's a lot more fun to do it as a cadre. So that's why I keep inviting. I have a good 12 campsites that I prepare for any of the, adepts who want to, come together and put together the traveling video art circus because we still got, 14 months to take this on the road. If a bunch of you guys with a couple of good vehicles and a little bit of chump change and with some, writing web page experience, we put together a good web page and put ourselves on as a traveling video art circus of the Freely Inquiring Society and go around the colleges. That's what brought on the civil rights movement of the 60s. A bunch of white liberal kids in California and Massachusetts decided to go on the Freedom Bus, right? And they went down south. And a bunch of them got whacked. They were going down they heard Martin Luther King's speech, that Martin Luther came to the college, went down there, and they were like, whoa. They didn't realize what was going on. And so they came back to their colleges and had teach-ins, right? And that's what kicked off the civil rights movement. And then a bunch of those guys got drafted, went off to Vietnam. So what that was, and with the political sensibilities of their experience of the freedom marching, they came back and organized the anti-war movement. And again, did teach-ins and college campuses. And that's when they had a draft. I was of the age of the draft. when I got drafted, I went down to Water Street, and the guy, I'm in my underpants, and I got my file with me, and he's got a file on me like that big, and he like pats the file. He goes, Al, we don't think we can trust you with a gun. How would you like to do alternative service? I said, yeah, because I'd already been in that mode. That's where I was going to say, hey, So, I went and worked at the VA. That's why I met my first colonel, who turned me into a healer, sent me off to, study with Sensei in Vermont, sent me to study Chinese natives and Dr. Wong, and sent me over to Davenport, Iowa, to study osteopathy. Right? So when I came back in 2.5 years, I learned to do acupuncture. I learned to do osteopathy. I learned Chinese herb. I learned energetics. I learned a whole bunch of different Eastern massage techniques and psychotherapy. And I started building a protocol with my boss, and we built one that got people off of heroin like that. There's a place in your ear, you put an earring in there, and then there are a number of herb protocols and other acupuncture things. Within 3 weeks, bango, they're off the herb. And then you take them out to the woods, and you give them a little bit of mushrooms so they have a psychotropic experience, and it breaks them through their PTSD. And they're starting to do that now. The Army actually has in their medical kit the guys in Iraq and Afghanistan acupuncture needles. It only took them 40 years. And they killed my colonel, my first colonel. He was going to D.C. to go in front of a congressional hearing about what we were doing. And he died on the New Jersey Turnpike, car crash, and they found a bullet in the back of his head. They called it a car crash, but he had a bullet in the back of his head. And when they brought the body back to our VA, and our our own ME at Fort Hamilton, an autopsy on our colonel, he showed me the bullet hole. Right? And about a week after we put the colonel in the ground with all the big guns and salutes, somebody came to visit me and said, okay, here's the document. And they said, sign it, and you can go, you don't have to serve another 3 years. Your service has been fulfilled. And not only that, sign that. Here's a check for what you would get paid in the next 3 years, which was about $25,000. 3 years. I made about $8,000 a year working at the VA. And here is a little, go to college ticket. So that's what I did. I'm no fool. There's a point where, here's a good story. So I had a really good friend for many, many years. His name was John Cunningham. Something about the name David and John. These people they're the ones who self-emulate, set themselves on fire, socially, culturally. And so John and I had gone to the seminary together. So I knew him from then. And he was unbelievable Catholic. I was just there because my godfather's a cardinal, and I was going to be a rocket scientist for the Pope, and I'd be making my Catholic mother proud. And so years later, I met him again at Hofstra, and then years later, I got him at NYU. And he was getting his doctorate in cultural anthropology, right? And so his master's and his undergraduate was in, high-level mathematics. And so he got into the Kabbalah, and he got into the Mayan calendar. and he started understanding the harmonics of the spheres, and that's kind of where I was into because they have that's how you tune a transformer. And so we made this pretty amazing team, and I showed you those pictures of the performance art I used to do, where I would make a bubble chamber, and we made a bubble chamber at NYU, and used the photonic current coming out of it, to run my Tesla coil, which went into a whole other universe, right? And I would do these performance pieces, and Enrico Fermi built the first nuclear pile in a squash court in Chicago because it had these big three walls, really, and then a glass wall, right? So people could watch. Anyway, so I used to do my performance art where I would make this photonic, what Franklin used to call ether, and it would go temporally through and go into people, and I would, through a scalar amplifier, play records, old 78s of old jazz and old, operas and old symphonies, and people would feel the emotions of the artist making the music. And so John was my roommate because I got a loft in Williamsburg, and he had no place to live. He was living in this little closet. I said, "Listen, John, for $200 a month, you can live in a gigantic loft and have a great place, and we'll have a great time." So he moved into the Williamsburg loft with me. Anyway, one summer, I had a friend on a 96th Street boat basin. They had, they rented slips for about $50, and it was water, gas, and electricity included, and 2 parking spots in Manhattan for $50. So we rented one of these things, and we built a cabin. And I got 55-gallon drums and styrofoam, and we built a 3-story high, 24 by 24 foot that fit right into the slip, right to edge to edge, but it floated. It wasn't attached. It floated, and we could move it out. We had a little Evinrude that we could put around on this thing, and we lived in that, right? And we still had the loft, but that was our summer lodge, right? Because I was working on a couple of really fancy restaurants uptown, so instead of having to go all the way to Williamsburg, I had this place, and it was really right on the Hudson River, and the big park that Grant's tomb is. Anyway, so we're there, and John's going to NYU, and I'm hanging out at NYU. And I'm studying anthropology, too. This is where I get my anthropology chops. And there was a guy named D.J. Markley, who was a big-time anthropologist, cultural anthropologist. He studied under Margaret Mead. He was going to, Colombia and hanging with these guys. Well, he was the biggest, before the cartels. He brought in cocaine, right? And artifacts, right? So anyway, John and I were working on this whole thing about, and this is in the 80s, and we were working on this thing about the Mayan calendar, what it meant. And Markley, that was supposed to be what he was supposed to be studying. So he was like, good boys, do this, then I'll put my name on it and I'll take all the credit, and then you'll get your chops, right? So anyway, we came, mathematically, we showed that what the Mayan calendar really was. It wasn't this, linear, long, thing that the white boys said it was. It was this non-linear time machine, right? And we mathematically had it. Anyway, Markley came to us one Sunday, and we were preparing to publish, put it in a peer-reviewed thing. And he said, "Listen, boys, you can't publish this." And John was like, "What? We've been working on this for 3 years. This is going to be, And he goes, "Yeah, but, the way it's going to be published is going to be under my name. And that means people are going to laugh at me. And no, we can't, we can't publish this. And then he takes out of his briefcase, he takes out 2 PhD doctorates signed. And our names are all scrolled, John and Al. And he goes, boys, if you, sign this non-disclosure agreement right here, you right now have your PhD. Not only that, I have these 2 contracts where you will be tenured PhD professor at NYU. And then you can go study whatever you want. And then 10 years from now, you can publish this under your own name and get a Nobel Prize. And I said, sure, yeah, sign me up. Because he was also had a bag of money. Because he was, making a lot of Benjamins of that cocaine that he was bringing in. And so he had a lot of, so we were going to make each $100,000 of free cash. PhD, professors, tenured professors at NYU, making $70,000 a year, and John goes, no, we can't do that. That's not honest. And I was going, what? I said, John, do you know who this guy was hooked up to? This is one of those, offers you don't refuse. Right? And John and DJ's there, and he keeps going, no, we're gonna go through with this. We're gonna publish. We're gonna blah, 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 because we want people to know what's really going on this earth. We have to change things because the calendar will change things. Da, 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 da. Anyway, so PJ doesn't say anything. He goes, well, it was Saturday evening. And he goes, you got until Sunday night, midnight, to call me up. I'll be at this number from now till midnight Sunday. After Sunday, all bets are off. So I walk out to DJ to where he had his Jaguar parked. And, we're talking. And he goes, listen now, talk John into this. You're his best friend. Make him see sense because you know what's on the other side of this. I said, I understand. And so, so he didn't threat us. He just says, you know what's on the other side of this? And I said, yes. And so, I worked for Tony Tutos and Bobby Bentos and Mike Finelli. I knew what was on the other side of it. So, I keep trying to chip away at John. Come on, John. We'll be PhDs Monday. Tuesday we'll get our own office. Come on, girls will be like, he was so Catholic. He was so programmed. He couldn't not do it. So Saturday night, I don't call DJ. I don't give him a report. All I do is start packing my bags. And I had already that afternoon gone to Laker and bought myself a $60 ticket to go from Kennedy to Heathrow in London. I knew that would be far enough away. And so I told John, listen, John, if we do not do this, they're going to kill you one way or another. And you're my bud. I don't want, don't be this stupid. We'll be PhDs. We'll be tenured professors at NYU. We will get $100,000 cash each that we can spend any way we want, and it won't be taxed. We will be getting $70,000 a year. We'll be able to go to Brazil and any country as PhDs. We will get visas to go anywhere. He was right. He was right. Because he was a Virgo, and he was right. So I said, okay. So he sees me back. He says, what are you doing? He goes, I'm going to London. He goes, what? I already bought the ticket. What? I said, yeah, John. I don't want to be around to see what happens. And I don't want to get caught up in it. I have friends in London, and then I'm going to Amsterdam, and then I'm going to Sweden. And then I'm going to places unknown. So you good luck with what you want to do. Good luck. So what has happened? So I go off to, now I'm not on the books. You know, I was just, being in John's box. Showing him things that, to get him set up so he could publish his paper. Yes, my name was on it. Yes, I was research assistant, but I wasn't, matriculating to NYU. There was no, paperwork on me, but there sure was on John. So, I mean, he was signed in. I wasn't. So, got on the plane, and I never saw John again. 25 years go by. I go back to, to New York City after leaving it in '88. I go back to New York City in 2011, and I go into a restaurant, and it's one of those restaurants where it's kind of fancy, and the kitchen is kind of opened into the dining room, and I see the guy washing the dishes, right? And there's John Cunningham washing the dishes. The guy who owns a restaurant. So I'm a guy who's well known for building really fancy restaurants. And the reason why I'm in this restaurant, it's in the West Village, and a friend of mine told this guy that I build fancy restaurants, and I was there to meet him. And so we're having a nice lunch made by this fancy guy. He wants to build more restaurants, right? And so I basically see John there. So the guy, I go, who's that guy over there? Oh, his name's John. And I said, so what's his story? He goes, oh, he's a DeFrock priest, and he got caught smuggling cocaine into America, and he did 12 years in jail, and he, everything he ever did was thrown down the toilet, and all he can get is, working there. He works really hard, and he works really, he sleeps in the back room. And I said, okay, I don't think I'm going to do your restaurant. He goes, what? You don't want to do my restaurant? And I said, nah. And I said, these are the reasons why. I said, you have a really good restaurant, right? And you're very successful. But if you try and reproduce this in other places, you're going to go bankrupt because you're going to overextend yourself monetarily, and you won't be able to produce the same product because you're going to stretch yourself. I've been watching you. You're everything in this business. Well, how can you be everything in another restaurant? And you want to make 5 or 6 other restaurants. You got a lot of money. Just go invest in the stock market. You'll do a lot better. And he said, and my friend, who I built restaurants for, wanted to tell him the same thing, but he couldn't because they were both chefs. And that's why he brought me there, because he knew that I would see what it is, because that's really what I do. I see what's going on. So that guy said, well, I'll go find somebody else. Right? So he did. He went and found somebody else. And, he went, exactly what I said was going to happen. And that, his business fell apart. He got divorced from his wife. He went bankrupt. All the above. And he did exactly what John did when we were at NYU. He knew better. He wasn't going to listen to anybody. And so he went down that road. And so a number of years later, I never saw John again. But that guy, my good friend, who was a good restaurateur, because he started other restaurants, and what he would do, what he was really good was starting restaurants. He was a great chef. And his first restaurant, he got world famous for that. What he would do is go find other great chefs and put them, like Bobby Flay worked in one of the restaurants that he opened. And he put Lynn was the person he banked. She had an idea. She worked and managed a number of his other restaurants. And so he said, man, I'm going to back you with your idea of your restaurant. And here's this young chef. So this big famous chef was putting up the word about this new restaurant, new starting, and he made Lynn famous, and he made Bobby Flay famous. So what that guy was really good was making other people famous and making a lot of money out of it. So he's doing really great things for society, for those individuals, and himself. And that's the way it's supposed to work, right? That's what Love's Co-Creation does. And the Codex is just the beginning. It's just the key. It's not the whole thing. You have to bring in other components because it deals with hyperdimensional physics. You know, it deals with the cabal, the Jewish cabal. You know? And so it's a lot deeper mathematically than just the Codex, right? And that's the problem with scholastics is that things get stuck in a book, and you got to be able to smoke that joint in the laboratory, right? And that's what those guys were doing in Los Alamos. You know, I talked to old timers at Los Alamos. I went there in the early '70s when those guys were still around, and they used to huff when they were turning plutonium into metal, you know, to make the little ball that the implosion atomic bomb was made out of. You know, so they would have to put it in a cauldron and smoke. They used to huff plutonium, and they would like, woo! And there is a place in New York City, in the Empire State Building, and in Tesla's laboratory on Hudson Street. You know, Mohawk Electric. You know, go look up or Google Tesla's Hudson Street laboratory, and it's just down the street from where they have AT&T long lines building that they built in the 70s and 80s. That whole area is like a cabal of wild and crazy underground stuff. You know. Anyway, so I was around people who did stuff like that. And I wasn't about to do that or be written in, you know. I didn't want to do what John did. He got written in. And he thought he was right. And the restaurant guy thought he was right. Ego is your death. Love's co-creation is the only true destiny for humanity. And that's why I serve Love's co-creation. Yes, the real cool thing about Margaret Mead is the person she studied with at Columbia. He was a Jewish sociologist who ran away from Adolf early, and he came to New York, and he, because cultural anthropology was first to develop to prove scientifically that white men were superior to everybody else. And this Jewish guy came, and he said, no, that's not what it is, right? Cultural anthropology is about what's going on. And so so he had this whole crew of women. There's Margaret Mead and another Judith something, and she was the one who went and studied. Margaret Mead went and studied teenage sex in islands, in the Pacific, and this other woman studied Indian folk, their tribal stuff in New Mexico, and there was Zora Austin, something or other, black woman who was the queen of Harlem, Renaissance, and she was a painter and a writer and a singer. She was best friends with Billie Holiday, and she was in everything. And she studied with these guys and wrote anthropology. You should read her books. And she came from a place called Port St. Lucie in Florida. And down there, they had the Highwaymen, a whole bunch of these black itinerant artists who traveled the Oh, what do they call it? It was the trail of all the jazz musicians. It was called oh the Collier Green Trail or something. But it went from New York down through the South down to Florida, then went up to through Louisiana, through New Orleans, up to Chicago, and then across. They kept going around. All these bands would go around, and painters and performers and poets would go with them, and all of the great black artists came from that. And so go find who Margaret Mead studied under at Columbia and see the women who were her cadre. And read their books. Go read those are like wow. And that guy who taught he wrote 3 books that are off the hook. And he was the guy who gave there was this guy, a psychologist, who I forget his name, but he wrote about the 5 driving forces of human nature. Pavlov's dog kind of guy. And one was roof over your head, a meal, being part of a crew, loving someone, having your own self-esteem, and then the most highest form of being a human is having your own raison d'etre, understanding that you're here to follow this path. That path is higher than any ego or job or fame or fortune. And so you guys need to play this show over a few times because I've just in the last 20 minutes laid down some interesting stuff. And that's what's sad about, that's why I was so upset when John, went through my personal privates, and he really had to dig. There's a couple of images of him showing all my stuff, right? So he had to really dig through all of that crap to find that stuff. Then he brought it out without even saying that it came from me. Well, who else did it come from, right? And there were a bunch of things, like there was a little bag of Fisherman Friends. I mean, you constantly see me eating those things. And then he made up some really lame, childish, infantile, not even teenager storylines. I mean, one thing, he made up a really cool story, but the really sad thing is that his own backstory of his parents and his grandparents is amazing. He's embarrassed of them. Plus, he never listened to them. He was surrounded by them, and he thought it was useless, and he got more and more anxious about it, and he caused himself to have his own version of PTSD, exactly what Donald Trump is suffering from. Donald Trump is suffering from PTSD because he couldn't live up to his old man. And his old man kept controlling and giving him money, gave him, at least $60 million. Why he doesn't want to show his tax returns? Because it would show that his father bailed him out every turn of the screw. And that Donald was, a out and out failure, as he is a failure in this. Now, if Donald only stepped up one more step, because everything he's saying is righteous, but he's saying, fake news. Well, all news is fake, But if he just did a little homework, he read some history books, and saw what the story was, he has the bully pulpit. If he talked like I talk to the American public, he would not just have 6 million people as base, and those people are whack. They're ready. They're armed and they're ready. Let's have. They all talking about civil war. All the people, who I'm surrounded by, who are his followers. That's why a friend of mine gave me this hat because he knew I'm surrounded by these folks, and this is like my safety net. People always pat me on the back, let me, they'll laugh out, because he's one of us, right? And when we really talk, I really talk, and they really listen, and they go, "Wow, you're right. See, Donald's right, and Donald is right." Pulling out of all those words, he is right, but he's doing it the way he's being. He's got a wire in his ear, and he's going to cause all of those 11,000 ISIS guys who've been totally traumatized will come out and they will, make more babies and traumatize them, and there will be a million wacko ISIS guys that will go. They will be like the dawn of the dead, and it'll be because of Donald Trump, just like ISIS was caused by George W. and Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney did this on purpose. Go watch that movie Vice. It'll blow your mind. And that's all these movies. They tell the freaking truth because that's part of the hidden hand. That's why guys like Steven Spielberg make all these movies because he is written in. J.J. Abrams written in. They're putting all of this into the subconscious of the general public.
Wow.
So
Hey. First time card come out, everybody.
they're still playing ball.
The 10 good.
So I'm going to turn the camera just this way, and I'm going to go get myself a glass of water. I've been talking too much.
I got I couldn't even put a shirt on. It hurts so bad. Rubbing on it. I think you get over it. Go, Candy Man. Candy Man, get you some candy, boy. I like candy. You got a king of clubs. Candy frame chat. Woo!
You got some nerves.
Hell yeah.
There's nothing there. Ain't like I got to get up work. Sorry.
I worked up next to you, baby.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Okay, so I laid down a bunch of stuff. Let's have some interesting. So again, Codex is just the key. It's just the first little step. You're gonna have to basically start studying the Kabbalah, right? Jewish Kabbalah, and you're gonna have to start looking at a thing called torsion physics, and it's going from trigonometry to geometry. And the only true math is Euclidean geometry.
I got the
You
other
know,
loose.
and so you're gonna have to start looking at how things get framed,
You got the hard though. I got
and that you see that they're multidimensional. Like see, these are all the different dimensions.
a man of
That so time isn't this linear thing. It's this multidimensional thing. And so when you take, that's why certain shamanic folk, do herbal things, but you don't need, I don't do anything, any substances. So when I was in Brazil, there were, I think I told you the story. So I'm in Brazil. I got brought to Brazil by this lady in Buzios who owns everything, owns the people, the town, and it is the place where the Eurotrash goes, right? And why Buzios? It was just a little fishing village along the Atlantic coast of Brazil, and the only reason it became this hot spot of the Europeans is that the Nazis ran away from there and built a hospital for all of the thousands of Nazi, hierarch Nazis, and they perfected plastic surgery and genetic engineering. They would tweak the gene pool and if you guys heard me read, two, three, the live chat I did last Saturday. The first one I read, about 15 pages of my new novel, right? About Damara and Job, and Damara's, a genetically engineered creature, the island of Dr. Moreau. And that's what I saw in Brazil. In this hospital, they had all of that. So they could change you into anything, any other human being you wanted to be. If you were 90, you wanted to be 27, they could do it, right? New face, new fingerprints, new voice box. I mean, and this is a 1980 time. And so, and so I built this nightclub because I had built a nightclub called Xenon in Times Square in the 30s. And this woman went to it and was like blown out. And I get this phone call. I'm gonna ring, yes. And when I was living on 13th Street in the Alphabet City. Are you Al? Yes. Do you know Michael? Yes. Well, we got him. We're going to kill him unless you come to Brazil and build a nightclub. Good. He owes me $500 to kill him. Click. Ring, ring, ring. No. We're not kidding around. We're really going to do that. Good. Kill him. Click. Ring, ring, ring. No. I said, I don't care. He owes me. He'll never pay me. He's always burning me. I'm tired of it. Kill him. Click. Ring, ring, ring. Okay. We'll pay you a lot of money to come here. We're not going to kill Michael. And we want you to build the nightclub. I said, okay. Send me a Western Union of $5,000, a first-class airplane ticket on the national airlines of Brazil to Rio, and meet me at the airport. Okay. I get thing. So I have the cash. I put half of it in a safety deposit box in New York, and I put the other in cash in my pocket. And I don't bring anything. I've learned to travel the world with nothing. I had my little bag of my personal things, my camera, my notebook, the book I'm reading, a few other things, my little herbal things to keep me alive. Thing of Fisherman's Friends, which I wish I had right now. And so I basically, get on the airplane, have a really beautiful flight, first class, get off. I'm going, and everybody else, they get, their own chair and another chair, and they stack it high with microwave ovens and VCRs. And as we're going through customs, they all have these big wagons with like 100 VCRs. And the guy goes, you got anything to declare? They say no, and give them a VCR and roll through. And the guy says, go right ahead, stamp the thing. And me, I have nothing. Little bag. I said, no, this is all I got. Here's the $2,500 I'm illegally allowed to walk in. And I've turned it into traveler's checks like I was told to do. And red light. And they want me to sign the traveler's checks over to them. And I said, no, where's your boss? Right? So they go, well, boss, I say, I'm not you. I'm going to be rolled. I want to be rolled by the boss, And they only speak Portuguese,
Hey, you like these?
So 20 minutes go by. This guy is a really, really, really nice dude. Really tall. Really dark sunglasses, really beautiful white hair, well trimmed. He comes in and goes, I'm so sorry. I was a little late. I was going to meet you. Oh, let's go. Thank you. No, you got to hit me a little in the middle of that. You know what it is? I'm taking this medicine for my high blood pressure, and it makes you cough. So I had to stop it. Then my blood pressure. Doctor, please. So a little bit left in there. So that's why I'm drinking water. Anyway, so I go there, we drive, there's a limo out there and this guy. And from his waist up, he's dressed like a chauffeur. And he's wearing these thick, black, like welder's glasses, right? And he's feeling the side of the car for the handle, opens it up and get in. And at the bottom, he's wearing shorts and no shoes. And he gets in. But when you see him in the window, he looks just like number one chauffeur. Bottom pants, not so much. So he pulls out and he just floors it. He just keeps flooring it. We fly out of the airport. We fly out of Rio. We get on this road. We're going up and down and up, and we're going along the coast. And then we come to the top, and he's passing all these big trucks. And we get to the top, and another truck comes, and both trucks kind of do this, and he just squeezes between the two trucks. Every time we go up and down, every top of the thing, he's flying over it. And the guy in the back with me, the man who's dressed to the nines, he's the lawyer. And so he's got all these things and he's looking at, and he's smoking these little cigars. And he goes, would you like one of these? It's a blunt. And so in my remembrance of what a blunt is a cigar with lamb's breath in it. I said, is that got something inside? Oh, yes, the best. Why not? And it was like, whoa. So I was feeling no pain, so we're going up and down, and I'm no longer scared. I go, wee! Wow! And so we go 200 miles, we come over the last hill, and there's this beautiful little peninsula about 60 miles out into the Atlantic. And it's all, little villages, and in the middle, right on the big, beautiful part of the beach is the fun house of Buzios. And so we pull in and we go through the little towns and down the hills and around, and the places where farmers are working. And it's this big black limo that's like, it's a Mercedes, but built like a tank. You could hit it with an RPG and it would keep going. And we, I get there. And so we go to the top of the mountain in the center of Buzios. And that is a big, fancy hacienda. And it looks like something straight out of Star Wars. It looks like where Jabba the Hutt was. It's got a big gate and got all kinds of guards. And we pull up and they open up and we're pulling in and he goes, no, we're going to meet the madame. And no matter what happens, really say nothing unless she asks you a direct question. And no matter what happens, do not look at her directly. And whatever you do not look her in the eye. I go, okay. So, and I was expecting to see Michael, like Han Solo, stuck in carbonite. And we go in there, and it's just like, all these sycophants around her, and, guys playing Brazilian music, not Mexican music. And little tables of all kinds of nashi things to eat. And I get introduced to Madam, and she goes on and on, just gushes about, about Xenon, and that she wants me to build a club just like Xenon. And when I talk to somebody, I look them in the face, and she looked just like Jabba the Hutt. She looked like the Michelin Man turned upside down, like big tires, right? And she was wearing a gigantic muumuu, and she was eating these alive things that were swimming around in a bowl, and it's like straight out of that scene where Leah made up as the gunslinger. Anyway, so and I'm somewhere between Leah and Yoke, or Joke or Luke, and but I'm like looking at her with my eyes bulging out of my mouth, looking straight at her, and she just starts going, ho, 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 ho. Never seen someone like me before, have you? Ho, 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 ho. And the lawyer kind of grabs me and says in Portuguese, "Hey, I'm going to take him. He's been on the airplane. He's tired. We'll have breakfast with you tomorrow, or maybe the day after.
He'll make that.
But tomorrow I'll take him and show him everything and get him on the part, on the job." And she goes, "Okay." So he like drags me, like,
Hey,
and he takes me out of there. He goes, "Boy, are you lucky, man? Most people would be dead by now. You see that little block of wood and the big." Anyway, so we get back in the limousine. We drive down over to this little fishing village. We pull in front of a house right on the water. Very beautiful little house. And another little shack. That's right on the water, but kind of built out of a nice little, thing around it, and their nets are hanging off it. And so he goes in there and he says in Portuguese, everybody out. He's going in there, me. And so he goes, "I'll pick you up tomorrow." And he goes, "What time?" I said, I'm still like from, up at Saint Madame. And so they're crying and they're moving their stuff out and into this little hut. And there's like 6 kids, and the old guy, the grandpa, he's like, on death's bed. And, I'm looking in there, and I don't need the house. And I go over and look at the little thing. I said, "Listen, I said, does anybody speak English here?" And the littlest, youngest kid does, I called him Jojo. Jose. Jojo. Because I do, And I go, "So tell your family they can stay in the house. I'll live in the shack." "Really? Big men deserve house. We are peons. We'll live in the shack." I said, "No. And I'm not that big of a man to do that. This is your house. You stay in it. Just give me a nice bed, clean the thing out. That looks nice. I like that." And so the mother, Jojo tells everyone, put all the stuff back. So they take the best bed
I'll let you look
and they put it in there. They take the best table, they put it in there. Best chair, put it in there. The nicest lounge chair, put it in there. And they had this nice little metal table with nice little metal chairs. And they put it on the little patio, right? And they, bring in some of those Coleman lanterns, and they bring in a lot of netting, and they put it around the bed, and they put it around the nice dining room table, so I'd have something to sit and not get bugged. And they put the light over in the corner and put it a nice box, so it sends out a nice shadow, so it's not that hard to pull the light. And they bring a big jug of water and put it up in a cistern, so the taps work. And so I go, "Okay, this is nice." And I take off my clothes and I jump into bed and I'm asleep. And when I wake up the next morning, my clothes have been washed and pressed and cleaned like they've never been that clean ever. And there are 3 linen suits made to that. A silk shirt, a linen jacket, linen pants, a straw hat, a cane, 3 of these suits, and these sandals made out of tires. And they had silk socks that fit over each of your toes, so nothing would get chafed. My skin only touched silk, and the outside was linen, so the air was going through. And I had this hat, and and I'm in bed, and these clothes are hanging up on this pipe, and I'm like, whoa! And my shoes are shined, and before I'm about to get out butt naked, and this really gorgeous woman comes in, and that's the oldest girl. and JoJo's with her. And he goes, this is my older sister. She's going to go to college and be a doctor, just like Dr. Helen. And I haven't met Dr. Helen yet. No, okay, sounds good to me. And she has made me this salad of papaya and mango and banana and grapes and tomatoes and avocados and these little favelas, these flaky little cakes with meat inside, and potatoes and onions and these molières, right? And a thing of punch, right? And which is Capa Capri, which is liquor made from sugar cane, and it's like a frosty and a mango juice, right? And coffee like you couldn't believe, and these little sweet rolls, a whole tray of these sweet rolls, almond sweet rolls, all different fruits, Anyway, she lays it all out, and takes the table and puts a beautiful, cloth on top of it and a beautiful plate and silverware, and pours me a coffee and hands it to me and goes, wow, this is, so she then, hands me my pants, and I put my pants on, and you don't need underpants because it's silk lined, right? And I put on my silk shirt. They fit like a glove because her mother and her spent all night sewing this stuff to the size of the clothes that I was wearing. And I was in pretty good shape in those days, and the clothes I was wearing were relatively form-fitting. So, man, I looked $1,000,000, right? Anyway, so I'm sitting on the veranda, having my coffee, eating these cakes, these favelas, the fruit. I am just, right? And so he brings me his favorite, Star Wars, lunchbox, right? And he pours the unbelievable coffee in there, JoJo does, and he puts, wraps all these nice little sandwiches and cakes and fruit in there. He says, you'll need that where we're going. This will be our lunch. And he has his own basket where he has even more stuff, and he takes the tablecloths and he washes, right? So JoJo becomes my manservant, right? Right off the bat, he wants, right? And so the only movie he's ever seen, and his family has seen, is Casablanca. So what do they call me but Rick, Mr. Rick? And the only thing they can say in English is Mr. Rick, Senor Rick, Senor Rick. Right? So that's what, from that day on, everyone in town starts calling me Senor Rick. Right? And I'm wearing the linen suits, and they first take me over to where Michael is. Michael is like, it's like 12 o'clock. It's starting to get hot, and he's still asleep, and there's like a line of women coming out of his room, and the lawyer beeps the horn, and Michael pops up in his underpants and like, oh, it's Al. And he was out, and he's hugging me and kissing me. Oh, it's great. You finally made it, right? And I said, they were going to kill you if I didn't show up. And I said, now you owe me more than $500. And he just kind of laughed it off. Anyway, he goes, yeah, they want you to build a Xenon's here. I said, yeah. So, they're only doing it because I told them that you did it, and I talked you up. That's why you're here. I've got you here. I said, I know, Michael, you got me here. Anyway, so.
Is your fries?
Yeah, have them.
Keep eating them.
Okay, good. I'm into sharing. And I got
They're okay.
well, that's, French fries are gold, even that. So how you doing? How you shooting? But you guys, for your bad is my amazing. I could never even bowl with you bowl bad. Anyway, so Michael goes back to having sex with all these women, and he's kind of in a divey. He's got his own little dive, right? And I'm living over in the fisherman's house, and they're more family people, so they don't want Michael over there. So this is more the the gamblers, the druggies, that kind of crew, the musicians, and so I basically, he takes me over to this beautiful cliff, and it's a beautiful beach, and none of the, I mean, it's near town, but the peninsula. This is the other end on the other side of the fishing village. So the fishing village has an escarpment that goes out there as part of the mountain, and then the beach here starts from there and goes all the way around about 6 miles. And so they're going to build a road, and it's a cliff. Right? They're going to build a road down to this beach. We're going to build a nightclub, and then we're going to build a little shopping thingamajig with a couple other restaurants and some hotels. And all I'm really responsible to start up is the nightclub. Right? That's going to come later.
You're going to need some more money over here. You're going to need more money over here. You lost $5 to teach you $500. Then you're going to live $100 because you need
So,
you owe $6.
so I go, well, that's going to take you forever to build that. He goes, oh, no, we'll get it done in a couple of weeks. And I go, really? Oh, come on. No, it's going to take a lot longer than that. He goes, no, you'll see. Anyway, so he takes me on the tour of everything, all the rich people, all the different business people, and then all of the, real important people. And he takes me to the Nazi hospital, right, where I meet Dr. Helen, who runs this place. And she's about 29, unbelievably gorgeous. We meet, we sit, we have a nice lunch on her little veranda, and she tells me the whole story. And she's like, straight up, my grandfather is the doctor, right? And we're German, we're all German, and the doctor, he was Mengele's, worked with Mengele, and she goes on, and this is in 89, and she's going on about how they genetically, she's telling me everything. I'm just like, anyway, she goes, and I've been to New York, and I've been to the Tunnel Club, I've been to Kamikazes, I've been, I saw your art gallery, you're an amazing artist, I'm really drawn to artists, right? Anyway, so we hit off a really good friendship, right? And I'm very, I understand the Brazilian high culture, you don't just jump on somebody's phone. And I just kind of lost my twin flame, and so I'm not really thinking about that. And I did this basically to get me out of New York, to get my mind off of all the things that were going there, and to look at a new direction to go. And the lawyer, takes me from that lunch, and we go to another lunch down into the really, really super fancy, where all the really, really rich, powerful people go and eat. And it's all meat. In Brazil, it's like Argentina. Everything's meat. The Argentina is the best at meat. Brazilian second best. And they have these guys in gaucho uniforms, and they have these stations. They have every kind of cut of meat you can think of on a sword. And they bring it to you. What do you want? How do you want it? And they will cut it, put it on the sword, and they take it and they put it on your plate. Right? So there's every kind of meat you could think of. Brisket, you name it, and the best you ever taste. And vegetables and everything else. Now, pretty much this whole day, I started out with breakfast. That was amazing. And then lunch with the doctor. And then this. This is like the in-between meal. and they're drinking cachaças and smoking blunts, right? And then for every one blunt I'm smoking, they're smoking 5. And cachaça is like drinking LSD, So that day, I drank a bit too much and smoked a bit too much. And I was like, and then we went to the Shaky Shoe where this one of the rich guys' sons ran, right? And he was like going to be my best friend because he went to New York, and the club that he started was all the clubs that I did, and he kind of combined them all and bought. And he wanted me to give him pointers on it. Okay, so and that one day I meet everybody who's most important. I am the lady who owns everybody's white boy, right? And so I'm like the most popular kid in school, and I am wax stoned out of my mind. You know, I'm on another planet, right? And so, by about sun up, because I've been dancing all night with all these half naked women and just having a good old time, and I see Dr. Helen, and I go over, and she's got a little booth, and she's giggling at me. She goes, "You're quite funny." And I go, "Yes." She goes, "You're a really good dancer. You could be a carnival dancer." And I said, "Well, I was at, or, I'm a theater guy. Yeah, I learned to dance from Carl Orff." And she knew who Carl Orff. She goes, "He's the guy who, did Oklahoma." And and yeah, I said, "Yeah." And, yep, that guy. He was my dance teacher. She goes, and every time she would say something, I said, "Oh yeah," and she would know exactly who I was talking about. She had read about it or seen a film or a movie or a play, and anyway. And every time she goes, we would see each other like that. I would do something funny or amazing, and she would say, "I like you even more now," and she would keep saying, "I like you even more now," and then. So I spent a week getting to know everybody, and I don't even go by the construction site. But about a week and a half, I have JoJo because they give me a police car. I become the best friend of the police chief, right? And he's trying to give me a gun. He goes, "Big men need gun. Here's a gun." I said, "No, I don't need a gun." "Oh, you need a gun." I said, "No." I said, "Why do I need a gun? I have you. One of your policemen is always following me, or because whether we protect you, we work for the madame, and you're her most prized possession, and we're not letting anything happen to you, and we want you to be happy. You're like my brother, until he has to kill me, and I'm like, so I don't need a gun. You're always got my back. It's all good." So what does he do? He gives me a police car. Woo, "You need car." I said, "Okay, I need a car." So he gives me, and I've got a radio if I need to talk to him. And JoJo loves it, right? So he gets a police hat and a badge. I said, "I need a police badge." I put it on JoJo, right? So we drive around, and JoJo's hitting a button. I said, "JoJo, we can only do that out in the country. We can't do that in town, right? We have to be respectful." He goes, "But you're Senor Rick. You're Mr. Rick." And I said, anyway, about less than a week, we drive over. Once I get that car, so we should go check what they're doing over that site. So I go over there. They have built the road. They have cleared it, and they have not done it with any. They had no equipment. They did it with like hundreds of guys with axes and hoes and mauls and shovels, and they dumped. The only thing they had was a truck, big dump truck that dumped tons of stone, which guys sat on their butts and took a little and made these little squares, stones, and that's how they paved the whole road. Which they do this, they put down little stones, and then they put these. It's like back when New York City had whatever they call cobblestones, right? And that way the rain goes. That way they don't need culverts or anything. The rain just goes in the ground. So over there, and they almost have it done. I mean, they have it all cleared. So it's easy walking down to the beach. And they built a shed, more than a shed, like a little house over in the corner. So I can be there, and have they built me an architect's table, and they got paper, and it's like, and the guys are chopping a little path from over where the city is all the way through the jungle to drop a high voltage line and a water line there. And before we even start building anything, we're going to have water and electricity, which is half the city doesn't even have. But Madame wants this to be her new hotspot. So, they do that, and and they drop a transformer, and I said, oh well, this is my thing. So the electric, the utility guy comes over, we become best of buddies, and we're talking high voltage and all the above. I told him about my Tesla background. He's a big Tesla fan, and so we tune up the transformer. We drop a line voltage into my shed, and we drop a couple pieces of Schedule 40, which is plastic pipe or electric cables, to where the club is going to be. And now I have this beautiful little house on the beach. So I still have my nice little fisherman shack. It has a toilet, has running water.
You don't need that car.
And we put in a septic line, right? And we pump it up into the woods where we put, septic tank and leach tanks. And so before we even break ground on this thing, we have that. So before the second week, that nice little cabin is built. The electricity, water lines are in. The septic's in. The road is complete. And Madam comes down, and she has an old Cadillac, 1928. It's like a gigantic rolling house, right? And the blind chauffeur is her chauffeur. And come down, and I've done all these drawings, and I've had lunch with her a number of times. And even though she loved what Xenon's was, what she wants Rick's Casablanca. So I said, well, not a problem. It's basically how you guys build things, out of cinder block and concrete and cover it up, right? So, yeah, we can build this, not a problem. But I said, my whole idea, since we're right on the freaking ocean, that we're going to have Rick's, cars will come here, they will come into it. I'm going to go get that, the VCR, get me a VCR, and I'm going to play Rick's, movie over and over and over again. And where the people come in that thing, that's what the front of the club is going to look like. So when they drive in to the big loop, they will see that. And they will come to the same kind of doors, they'll come to the same vestibule. It'll be that same kind of bar. The gambling will be just, that will be, but the majority of the club will be out on the beach. Right? And the dining room will be out on the beach. And the kitchen will be out on the beach. Because I found this amazing Argentinian chef. And he had his crew. And he wanted to do it, right? I met him in Rio, right? And he wanted to, because the lawyer took me to Rio to go to this, wholesale place of kitchen equipment, stoves and sinks and tables and pots and pans. And so when you were there, the guy who owned the place had a son who had been studying to be a chef. And he had gone to France, and he had been in New York, and he had been in Argentina, and he was ready to make his big debut of this. He wanted this to be his restaurant. And I said, great, not a problem. And I looked at the lawyer, is this a problem? And he goes, no, it'll be fine with that. That'll be fine. Good idea. You're making all the right decisions. So I wanted it to be Casablanca, but totally Argentina. Meat and Brazilian vegetables and fish. Right? So, and we were going to have 100 tables. We were going to be able to have 1,000 people there. We had some busy nights, but not quite 1,000. But the back thing was the whole friggin' beach. And I had tables like out into the water, right? And we had a big bandstand, and we had 3 bandstands, 3 different bands I could play. The beach was like, 6 miles long. So I was going to spread this thing out as far as you could and have like the main kitchen. I would make the stuff, and the other little kitchens have different dining things. You know, the fish guys, the meat guys, the bakery guys, right? So, and there were going to be breakfast, lunch, and dinner all day long. But the place really never closed. And so,
You made that, I still think.
and they were building cabanas so people could stay on the beach. And so this was going to be the high-flying place for the rich and families from Europe. And so I totally went Mac Daddy on it. And we built it in like 3 months because it was like building the permit. You know, I had unbelievable whatever number of workers I wanted, and they were all good. And I would make a drawing, and they would build it. It was amazing, and they would take their own. This was Love's co-creation at its best, because I was, make these drawings on the architect's table, and they would take it, and we would work out some working drawings. They would go off and do it right there. They would go off in a truck and come back with the teak and the mahogany, and we had electricity, so we had a really good bandsaw, a really good table saw, a really good miter, a really good planer, and we had a heat box so we could bend wood. And these guys were masters at all of it. So I got them all the best of tools. You know what they didn't have in Buzios? We would go into Rio and get. And we built the shop because I knew they were going to build half of another city over there. And so I got these guys to be, I worked them into having a career for the next 20 years, right? And so, I had the pay book, So the average pay in this town was 30 cents a day. Well, these really good carpenters and masons and workers, I paid them $5 a day. One day, Madam came down, and we were going like balls to the wall. It was like really coming. This should normally take 2 years to make in New York City. We did the whole thing from the road to opening day in less than 3 months, right? And so I said, listen, look at the workmanship. Compare that to the crap in downtown Buzios. And she goes, you're right. And I said, you're going to have people here from Europe, and they're going to be amazed at what we built here. And that's why they're going to tell people in Europe to come back to this place. And I'm building you a group. We're going to build you a whole city like this, all the way down this 9 miles of the beach. Look, they're already starting to build cabanas. She goes, okay. Right? And I said, you're going to make more money than you can imagine. Right? She goes, okay. So she was like, well, these people are master craftsmen. You're right. They deserve more than 30 cents a day. So then we're getting to open. So I get a crew, right? And everybody and his brother wants to work with me. Because all these guys who are related to all those people in town are getting paid $5 an hour, $5 a day. And that's changing the economy of the whole city. Now, these people have money, so they're buying stuff in the stores. They're buying other stuff in the poor people's stores. And so they're getting better stuff there, right? So we get our staff, and I pay the chef, right? I pay him $100 a day. And I pay his second and third tier like $40 and $20, right? And that was like, whoa. And I pay everyone, who are busboys and dishwashers. Everybody who's like that kind of staff, $5 a day, right? And they're only working like 6 hours, or 8 hours, So I do that, and she comes. She goes, "We're having like $1,000 a day payroll." That's. I said, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. We're going to make $20,000 a day profit, and we're going to have a $10,000 overhead. We're going to get the best meats, the best fish, the best everything, not just something that'll do, but the best. And it'll be known as the best. Madame's best. That's what we're calling it. Madame, Senor Rick's. Madame's best. So, it opens up, and of course, it's a grand success. And, from day one, right? And Michael is the band leader because he has a great voice. He is a great musician, and he has this way with other musicians. So he's living over in that kind of gangster part of town where all the musicians. So he has a really good band. I mean, really good. And he has this guy who's the band leader. Michael's like Frank Sinatra, and the band leader's like Duke Ellington. And this guy is black and white. So he's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and a very cocoa kind of, like he's got a really beautiful tan, and very English looks, very tall. And he lives in a cave on the other side of that. The fishing village is over here, the beach where the club is over here, and there's this mountain going into the ocean. Well, you kind of walk at low tide along there, and then go up this path of the mountain. There's a cave, and you go in the cave, and he lives in the cave, and the whole cave, the ceiling is covered in bats and spiders. And I don't know where he got it, but he has the whole cave is furniture from Sears and Roebuck, the kind of stuff that your Aunt Tilly had that was covered in plastic. You had couch, tables, and kitchen set, and a bedroom set, and it's got these big candelabras with candles, and you can only get into it at low tide. And the low tide is at 6 in the morning, then it goes up high, and then around 3 it comes down enough, because otherwise the water kind of fills the cave up, and the cave goes up above sea level. But where the opening is, you can swim into it, so you could swim into the cave. I did that a number of times, but because you could walk along the beach, go along this path, and then if it's high tide, you could dive in and swim to the cave and go into water. And if you knew how to do it, it wasn't a big deal because it was very dark. So you had to know what you were doing. So anyway, I always had a underwater flashlight with me. But anyway, so that was our crew. Anyway, the club opens, and I kind of move into. I also build myself a very nice apartment for the madame. She had her own little apartment, so she was partying. She didn't have to go back to Hacienda. She could. It was a very nice, and I had my own, right? And mine was right facing the ocean, east-west. So I got the sunrise and the sunset. I had this big, beautiful veranda that overlooked the club and the beach. And I had stairs that went through the back that would come down into my office. That was downstairs in the club. Or I had these very nice kind of secret steps that went down to the beach, right? And what I'm only asking from you guys is to have as interesting. I'm just your average Joe. There's nothing special about me except my one talent. You're only giving me one thumbs up. My only talent, or my greatest talent, was, and Madame Olga Kluber showed me this. She goes, your best talent is to be in the right place at the right time and realize it and take advantage of the moment. And to realize what you really want to do and go off and do it. And to learn, not to want to have an illusion of wanting to be this or that or a star or this, but that you're ready, willing to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning I didn't get off that airplane in Rio and I wasn't Rick. The 3 months of building that club made me Rick. The 3 months of me talking to everyone in Bucios, the lowest, poorest person, I would give a job to, I employed everyone who wanted employment. And I would pay the lowest I would pay somebody, the starting salary was $5 a day. Right? I got rid of the drunks. I made them, the guys who went and carried the booze, right? And they, they couldn't drink because if they started to drink, they couldn't stop. So they never made $5 a day of their life. And I made like up in that where the cesspool was. There was a whole camp up there, not where the cesspool was, but up in the woods, where all the workers had their own nice little hacienda where they would party and have a good time, and nobody could bother them. The police couldn't get up there, you know. And that's what made me Senor Rick. Rick. Right? So that was 1989. Right? And so by the fourth month, it was running, it was great. And I would show up and I mirrored my chauffeur buddy, right? Where he would wear this chauffeur outfit up here. He looked like to the pins, the chauffeur, but down below he had these raggy. So I had a pair of these linen pants that I would wear, wear like my work linen pants. I were shorts that kind of got tattered. I never, Maria wanted to watch them. No. I'm letting these guys ripen. And I would wear those every night, and I would have her mother and Maria made a silk Hawaiian shirt for me. The only shirt I showed up at, on the airport was a Hawaiian shirt. And they didn't have Hawaiian shirts in Buzios. They had other wild and crazy shirts, but not Hawaiian shirts. So that was so they made me a ton, but a lot of really pretty Hawaiian shirts. As beautiful as those real classic Hawaiian shirts that are only from Hawaii. And so that was my thing. I would wear my nicest linen silk Rick coat, and I would have one of my silk shirts on, and I would have an Hawaiian shirt vest, right? And then I would have these linen shorts that I had been wearing forever, and I would have my tired, sandals, with these silk socks, which they started making me Hawaiian silk shorts that covered every toe, right? Because if you know it or not, if you have socks that cover every toe, why you see those? So you never get blisters, because your skin doesn't rub against, right? So that was my costume, and I had this tan hat, and I would have these darkened, not as dark as the blind guy's sunglasses, but I always wore dark sunglasses, always, right? And that was my look, I didn't get off the airplane looking like that. It took me 4 months to become Mr. Senor Rick, And they didn't say it in Portuguese; they would say Senor Rick. And I learned Portuguese, because everyone spoke Portuguese. Very few. Jojo spoke English. Maria spoke very little English, and she wanted to be a doctor. So she wasn't fooling around with anything but studying, reading, learning. That's all she did. But my girlfriend became Dr. Helen, right? And so she would come and we'd have dinner, right? Almost every night she would come. And after the club, she came to the grand opening, and she had a sister who was not Dr. Susie Q. She was just a barfly. She was a party girl. She would go to New York and party all the time. But Helen, she worked in the hospital, and she mostly worked, the part of the hospital that took care of the poor people. I mean, Dr. Helen was really a special person. So anyway, about the fourth month I'm there, we're having, the place has been open about 3 weeks, and I'm having a beautiful steak and a beautiful lobster and beautiful vegetables and a beautiful, baked goods, and we're drinking champagne. And she goes, I keep telling you, I like you more and more. And I go, yes, I like you so much. I'd like to see your apartment. And from that point on, Dr. Helen and I were boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, her ulterior motive, yes, she liked me a lot, and she didn't have a boyfriend. Because every guy there were like dogs. Everybody slept with everybody. And she goes, "You're the only man I've ever seen who who's not gay and is, abstaining from, having sex. Don't you?" I said, "Well, I had some very close to me not too long ago, and I'm a kind of guy who, She goes, "I know you're the kind of guy who's only one woman man, and she's still in your heart. Well, I want to be in your heart too. It's okay that she's there. I won't be jealous that she's in your heart. You know, why is she not with you now?" And I said, "Well, she passed on." And she actually started to cry, and then we both started to cry, and that was it. That's when we consummated being boyfriend and girlfriend. And my, twin flame was above watching, going, "Well, that's good. That's what I wanted, right?" And she was tired of me, like, still pining for her because I couldn't see. I could see her, in my imaginary mirror. We could talk, but we couldn't do anything. So she was like, "No." And if you go to my most recent novel, you will read the story of her death and her resurrection. So, gang, again, you want to talk to me, go get a hold of me at thedudeawake42 at Gmail and put something in my PayPal. I've ran out of money, and it'd be nice if somebody dropped something in my PayPal account. And also, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to talk to me personally, and number you are, and I get back to you. And the last few days I haven't been around the internet. So anyway, what else can I say? So check that out. Go to my xratted.blogspot.com. Again, go to my Gmail. Go to my, Griot Publishing. And what else can I say? Please send me some money. That'd be nice. I'm running on fumes right now. And I still have to fix my car. I still need $200 for my strut. So, 2 hours and 11 minutes. My friend's still playing. He's putting on his shoes. So tomorrow, I will pick up the story from Buzios, and I will tell you about Dr. Helen's grandfather, the Nazi, and my experience with the Nazis in Brazil, the boys from Brazil. So I'm going to sign off right here. I love you guys. Give me some more thumbs up. Get more people watching this thing. Let's get some more people of the cadre. Start doing things in your own home. Start getting, start making your own stories, gang. Start making art. The only way we can change the world is with love co-creation through arts creation. Okay? I love you guys.